200. Over 200 either left before we came in because they knew it was coming or were fired or took early retirement. They are no longer employed by this department.
That's the Deputy AG, Todd Blanche, declaring that every single person who worked on any investigations into President Trump no longer works at the Department of Justice. None, he says. He's talking about the Jack Smith investigations into Trump's retention of classified documents and his efforts to overturn the 2020 investigation. Here's more.
President Trump, for the first time in modern history, has said, I am the president, and if you work in the executive branch, you work for me. And guess what? We can all read the Constitution. He's right. And unfortunately, past administrations, Republican included, have just resigned themselves to putting up with partisan actors within the Department of Justice. We do not.
Todd, which specific clause of the Constitution did you just cite? Which one said that an employee of the executive branch works for the president as opposed to a branch whose job it is to enforce the law? You see why I have pause here, because I actually worked at the Department of Justice. I was a line attorney. I was a trial attorney. I was at Main Justice. And I know that every prosecutor who swears an oath is doing it not to the president, not to a political party. They're swearing to uphold the Constitution. And when you stand in front of a trial courtroom, you are saying in front of a judge, which is a different branch, that you are serving on behalf of the people of the United States. It's a different than POTUS, people of the United States. Let's talk about it, because my next guest prosecuted the most high-profile cases from January 6th. He says he was fired for political reasons, and now he is suing. Mike Gordon joins us now. Mike, thank you for being here. I mean, it strikes me that as much as Todd Blanche seemed to enjoy bragging about the firings, he actually may have just helped make the case that there was some political motivation, or one that could be ascribed to the motivations for firing. That's got to be gold for all the wrongful termination lawsuits, right?
You would hope so, Laura. But the administration is taking the stance of something called the unitary executive theory. The idea is that all the Constitution's power is in the president himself and not in the executive branch as a whole. It's the idea that he is the law, he is the sole enforcer of the law, and so when Todd Blanche says we all work for him, what he is doing is spitting in the face of John Adams' quote that has defined this country for over 200 years, that we are a nation of laws, not of men. That we in the Department of Justice and the executive branch, that we uphold the law, not the whims or the desires of any person. President Trump campaigned on and made clear that he intended to spend his second term exacting revenge on all the people he believes have wronged him. And that has been one of the projects this administration has been doing since day one. And that's what's going on here, and that's what Todd Blanche is bragging about.
Wait, Blanche claims partisans have been fired. We're both old enough to remember that the idea of your political background is, for line attorneys in particular, who are not political appointees, has no bearing on the cases that you're working on. That is the expectation and the directive. But, there is a banner now that hangs in front of Main Justice with the president's face on it. I wonder if the Department of Justice has been irrevocably changed. I mean, you do see the president's picture, the attorney general picture inside of the building. Obviously, they're there, and the halls and different points in time. But do you see the outside images of this president combined with the statements that have been made as having a detrimental impact on what is meant for the Justice Department?
Absolutely, Laura. I think the department has been just kneecapped by what they've been doing over the past year. And it's not just the images. There's also a law, the Hatch Act, that says there's to be no political statements by government employees. And yet when the shutdown happened, the Department of Justice and many other federal agencies put on their websites that the Democrats were to blame for the shutdown. They're taking an explicit partisan stance. And that not only erodes the public's trust in the Department of Justice, the idea that it's there to serve all Americans, not just the ones who voted for the president, but it also undermines judges' trust in the government. The idea that the government can be relied on has been something the Department of Justice has made great use of in court for hundreds of years. And what I've seen and what I've heard is that is gone. Judges no longer trust they can take the government at its word. And that will take generations to repair.
That's a very scary proposition. People should realize that if judges doubt the prosecutors, juries doubt the prosecutors, and prosecutors are the only ones who can bring cases on behalf of a victim, then the pursuit of justice becomes perhaps a fool's errand. Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, just settled with the Department of Justice after he alleged wrongful prosecution. And I should note, Flynn pled guilty in 2017 to lying to the FBI about his contacts with a Russian official, and the case was later dropped. He was pardoned by the president, Donald Trump. Flynn is said to be getting more than $1 million. Should he?
Of course not. Laura, the whole idea is that when he pled guilty, he admitted that he did the thing that he was charged with. He stood up in court, he swore under oath that he had done those things, and the judge accepted his plea. Now, when the political winds change, he turns around and says it was a wrongful prosecution, and the Department of Justice that charged that case and took that plea by settling is now implicitly stating that they did something wrong. I don't know what that wrong thing is. I don't know how Michael Flynn can claim that he was wrongfully prosecuted for something that he pled guilty to, that he admitted doing. What it looks like from where I sit, Laura, is this is yet another example of the president using the government to enrich himself and his allies. This is just essentially public corruption, and it's in plain sight. This is no different than passing a bag of money.
Mike Gordon, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.